Alex's day had started like any other, quiet and routine. He woke up, made a cup of coffee, and sat at his checking emails. That was when his phone buzzed with a notification that made his stomach drop. At first, he didn't understand what he was seeing. The screen displayed a number that seemed impossible. $100,437.62. Credit card transaction approved. His hands froze over the keyboard. The numbers blurred as his mind struggled to process them. He double-checked the account details. The card was his. The transaction was real. It was from a dealership, one that sold luxury vehicles. The cold weight of panic started sinking into his chest. How could this happen? Who could do this? A sinking realization hit him like a freight train. He knew exactly who had access to his card, who had the confidence to swipe it without permission, who had the audacity to think this would be acceptable. His sister Emily. She was always daring, always reckless, and always managing to charm her way out of consequences. Alex's hands shook as he called the bank, heart pounding, hoping it was a mistake. But when the bank representative confirmed the transaction and mentioned the dealership name, the crushing truth settled over him like a dark cloud. He left work immediately and drove to his parents' house. Every red light, every stop sign seemed to mock him, stretching out the suspense and anxiety. He imagined what he would say to Emily, what he would tell his parents, and how he could possibly face the consequences of a $100,000 charge that wasn't even meant to be his responsibility. When he turned onto the familiar street, he froze at the sight that greeted him. There it was. A car he couldn't even begin to picture himself driving in real life, gleaming in the sunlight in his parents' driveway. The paint was flawless, the chrome sparkled, and the whole thing radiated luxury. His parents were beside it, smiling and almost in tears, oblivious to the storm brewing inside their son. And there she was, Emily, standing there with her arms crossed, smiling as if she had just accomplished something heroic. His voice caught as he tried to speak. "Emily, what is this?" His mother, full of excitement, rushed toward him. "Alex, isn't it beautiful? Emily surprised us. She said it was a gift from both of you." Alex's stomach twisted. He echoed, disbelief lacing his words. "Both of us?" Emily's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, just long enough for Alex to feel the sting of betrayal. "Let's talk inside," she said, her voice calm, almost rehearsed, trying to contain the confrontation. Inside the house, the truth came out quickly, shattering the fragile calm. Emily admitted she had used his credit card to buy the car. She tried to brush it off, saying she would figure it out later. She claimed she only did it because their parents deserved something special, something extravagant. She told him he would understand, but Alex couldn't. The sense of betrayal wrapped around him, tightening with every word. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust, about the implicit bond between siblings, about the understanding that some lines should never be crossed. Emily had violated every boundary in one bold, reckless move. Alex's mind raced, replaying the situation over and over. He imagined the process of buying the car, seeing his sister at the dealership, confidently signing for the luxury vehicle using his credit card, thinking of it as a harmless trick. The audacity made his blood boil. How could she be so blind to the consequences? How could she assume he would just forgive her? He remembered their childhood, the patterns that had always existed between them. Emily was always the leader, always the risk-taker, always charming her way out of trouble. Alex had often been the cautious one, the one cleaning up after her mistakes. He had always accepted it, thinking family meant tolerance. But this time, the stakes were too high. The betrayal was too deep. This was not a minor mistake. It was life-altering financially and emotionally. His parents, oblivious to the gravity of the situation, gushed over Emily's generosity. Alex felt his chest tighten. He wanted to scream, to demand that the truth come out. But he stayed silent for a moment, trying to control the surge of anger threatening to overtake him. The sheer scale of what had happened. A $100,000 charge on his name, with no prior discussion, was overwhelming. Every instinct screamed for action, for justice, for retaliation. Alex left the house, needing space to think. He drove aimlessly for a while, the city passing by in a blur as he wrestled with the whirlwind of emotions inside him. The betrayal cut deep. It wasn't just that Emily had used his card. It was that she assumed she could take from him without consequences. She had undermined his autonomy, his sense of control over his own life. And that realization left a bitter taste in his mouth. He remembered the thrill Emily always seemed to get from bending rules, from seeing what she could get away with. That same thrill now fueled a growing storm inside Alex. He wasn't just angry. He was calculating. He began thinking about the ways he could respond. Could he report it to the bank and reverse the charge? Could he confront her publicly, exposing her to their parents? Could he make her face consequences in a way she would never forget? But there was more than just the desire for revenge. There was also a sense of disbelief and hurt. A feeling that someone so close could betray him so completely. The combination of anger and betrayal sparked a deeper emotional reaction than he had expected. He felt powerless in the moment, yet the ember of resolve started to grow. He had to act, but he had to act carefully. He couldn't let rash decisions destroy his family or his own sense of morality. As he drove back home that evening, Alex replayed conversations he might have with Emily. He imagined her defenses, her justifications, her attempts to charm her way out. He envisioned standing firm, demanding accountability, and making her understand the weight of what she had done. The mental rehearsal both calmed and intensified the storm within him. At home, he paced back and forth, trying to process the implications. The numbers on the screen still haunted him. The image of the car in the driveway, a symbol of both luxury and betrayal, burned into his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that everything had shifted, that a boundary had been crossed that could never be undone. For the first time in his life, Alex realized that his desire for fairness wasn't just a fleeting emotion. It was a fire that demanded action. Not destruction, not chaos, but a reckoning that made Emily see, truly see, the consequences of her choices. He didn't want revenge for the sake of revenge. He wanted justice, understanding, and respect. The night ended with Alex sitting alone in his room, staring at the ceiling. He felt a strange mixture of emotions: anger, hurt, disbelief, and a faint glimmer of determination. Emily had won in one way. She had shaken him, challenged his patience, tested his boundaries. But she hadn't broken him. Not yet. And as he lay awake, planning and reflecting, he realized that the story was far from over. This was only the beginning of a conflict that would test not just his resolve, but his sense of morality, his sense of justice, and the very foundation of their sibling relationship. The betrayal had ignited something inside Alex that couldn't be ignored. The fire was slow burning, calculated, and patient. And in that quiet tension, in the uneasy calm before the storm, Alex knew one thing with absolute clarity. Emily had crossed a line, and he would have to respond. But how, and to what extent, remained to be seen. For now, he allowed himself one emotion: the sharp, focused clarity of someone who had been wronged and was beginning to understand the weight of what revenge could demand. And in that moment, the seed of action was planted. Alex couldn't stop thinking about what Emily had done. The image of the sleek luxury car in their parents' driveway haunted him constantly. Every time he closed his eyes, he could see it glinting in the sunlight, like a reminder of his loss and her audacity. He tried to distract himself with work, with calls, with errands, but nothing worked. The betrayal had dug too deep. He knew he needed a plan, and his mind began working on one, like a machine slowly warming up. He started by gathering information. He reviewed his credit card statements, the emails from the dealership, and even looked into the financing details. Emily hadn't bought the car outright. She had used his card for the down payment and the first few installments. That gave him leverage, a path to reclaim some control. He realized he could file a dispute, or even threaten to take legal action. He could make her face consequences that she had never considered possible. But as the details became clearer, a strange mix of emotions grew inside him. Part of him burned with anger. He could almost feel his blood boiling as he imagined confronting her, exposing her recklessness to their parents, and watching her scramble to fix the mess she had caused. That part of him wanted immediate action, a swift and calculated strike that would make Emily regret ever touching his credit card. Yet another part of him hesitated. He remembered the years they had grown up together, the shared memories, the moments when she had been protective, when she had been the sister he could lean on. Could he destroy all of that over one mistake, even one as serious as this? Could he turn this into a full-blown family crisis? He wasn't sure. The more he thought, the heavier the choice felt, like a weight pressing down on his chest at night. He lay awake, turning the problem over and over in his mind. He imagined different scenarios, filing the dispute immediately and having the bank reverse the charges, confronting her directly and forcing her to admit the truth to their parents, or, if necessary, letting it all blow up and watching as she faced the fallout alone. Each option had consequences, and Alex realized that revenge wasn't a simple path. It demanded precision, patience, and a clear understanding of his own boundaries. He began observing Emily more closely, paying attention to her habits, the way she talked, and how she interacted with their parents. She still acted as if nothing had happened, smiling and joking, as though the $100,000 charge didn't exist. That infuriated him even more. The casual way she walked around, pretending she was blameless, made the fire inside him grow hotter. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect, about boundaries, about proving that she couldn't take advantage of him without consequences. As the days passed, Alex also wrestled with a more subtle conflict. Morality. He knew he could make Emily suffer, but doing so would hurt others too. Their parents would be shocked, confused, even devastated if he exposed her. He thought about the car, the house, the family dinners, the laughter that could turn into tension overnight. He didn't want to destroy the family over this, but at the same time, he couldn't just let her get away with it. The struggle grew inside him, a constant push and pull between rage and restraint. Some nights, he plotted in vivid detail how he would confront her, imagining the words he would say, the evidence he would show, the look on her face as the truth hit her. Other nights, he tried to imagine forgiving her, trying to understand her perspective, hoping that she would see the error of her ways without him having to take extreme measures. It was exhausting, both mentally and emotionally. One evening, Alex sat at his desk, staring at the dealership receipt. He noted the registration details and the fact that the car was technically in Emily's name. That gave him pause. Technically, she owned it, but technically, it had been purchased with his money. That legal grey area fascinated him. He realized he had power if he chose to act. He could file a dispute, reclaim the money, or even involve their parents to hold her accountable. But every option required a choice, and every choice carried risks. As he pondered, he also began to understand Emily's mindset. She had acted impulsively, driven by a desire to impress their parents, to be seen as generous and thoughtful. She had convinced herself that the ends justified the means, that Alex would forgive her later. Understanding this didn't lessen his anger, but it added complexity. She wasn't a villain, she was someone who had made a reckless, selfish decision and assumed there would be no consequences. That realization helped him see the conflict as more than a simple right or wrong scenario. It was a test of judgment, of strategy, of restraint. The tension built steadily over the week. Alex began to write notes to himself, laying out possible actions and their likely outcomes. Step 1. Confront Emily calmly and gather her admission. Step 2. Evaluate whether to involve their parents or let her handle it independently. Step 3. Decide whether the dispute or legal action was necessary. Each step required patience and observation. He knew that rushing would ruin his plan. Precision mattered more than impulse. In the background, life continued. Their parents were blissfully unaware, talking about how wonderful the car was, how thoughtful Emily had been. Alex watched from a distance, feeling both protective and vengeful. He wanted them to be happy, but he also wanted Emily to face accountability. The duality gnawed at him, creating a constant tension between the desire for revenge and the desire for fairness. He began practicing conversations in his head. Emily, this is serious. You can't just take my credit card and do whatever you want. He imagined her defensiveness, her charm, the excuses she would give. But he also imagined keeping his calm, maintaining control, showing her that he was not to be underestimated. The rehearsals gave him clarity and focus. The more he prepared, the less his anger felt like chaos and the more it felt like a tool, a weapon he could wield with precision. Alex also spent time researching legal and financial options. He learned about credit card disputes, consumer rights, and how to protect himself in cases like this. Every article he read, every piece of advice he absorbed, fueled his strategy. He wasn't planning blind revenge. He was planning a calculated response that would make Emily recognize the gravity of her actions, without destroying the family in the process. Despite all this, the emotional weight remained heavy. Some nights, he imagined taking extreme measures, filing the dispute immediately, confronting her in front of everyone, forcing her into a corner. He felt the surge of satisfaction just imagining it, the thrill of finally gaining control. But then he remembered the potential fallout. Parents hurt, family trust fractured, long-term consequences. The thought made his pulse race and his stomach twist. Over time, Alex realized that revenge wasn't a single act. It was a process. It was about understanding the stakes, observing the other person's reactions, and carefully weighing the cost of each move. He understood that if he acted too soon, he could lose control of the situation. If he waited too long, he might miss his opportunity to assert himself. Every decision mattered, and every choice carried weight. By the end of the week, Alex felt a strange mix of exhaustion and clarity. He had mapped out the situation in his mind from every angle. He had considered every possible reaction from Emily, every potential outcome, and every way the situation could escalate. He knew that the moment of confrontation was approaching. The car, the credit card, and the betrayal were all pieces of a puzzle that would soon demand resolution. But Alex also realized that this wasn't just about the car or the money. It was about respect. It was about boundaries. It was about showing Emily that actions have consequences. He wanted her to understand the pain she had caused, to feel the weight of her decisions, without losing himself in the process. That distinction mattered. He didn't want revenge that destroyed him. He wanted revenge that restored balance. As he prepared for the inevitable conversation, He also reflected on the strange irony of the situation. Emily had intended to impress their parents, to be seen as generous and thoughtful. But in doing so, she had risked everything: trust, money, and family harmony. Alex now held the power to turn the tables, to decide whether this reckless act would be punished or forgiven. By the time the weekend arrived, the tension was unbearable. Every text from Emily, every interaction with his parents, felt charged with anticipation. He had to act soon, but he had to act carefully. The stage was set, and the players were in place. Alex had learned that revenge wasn't about immediate satisfaction. It was about strategy, observation, and patience. He was ready. And in that quiet, tense space, Alex realized the truth. The moment of confrontation would define not just the outcome, but the kind of person he would become. He had a choice. He could let anger control him, or he could channel it into something precise, calculated, and ultimately transformative. This was the build-up, the psychological storm, the waiting before the decisive action. The betrayal had sparked a fire in him, and now it was time to see how that fire would be used. The day had finally come when Alex knew he had to face Emily. The tension in his chest had been building for weeks, a constant pressure that refused to fade. Every hour he waited felt like it amplified the betrayal, the audacity, and the sense of powerlessness he had felt the first time he saw the car. The sleek vehicle in the driveway had become more than a symbol of luxury. It was a reminder of trust broken and boundaries ignored. He couldn't let it go unresolved. He reviewed his options one last time, pacing his apartment as he considered the consequences of each possible action. Filing the dispute could reclaim the money, but it would hurt Emily financially and possibly their parents emotionally. Confronting her in front of everyone might shame her and satisfy a sense of immediate justice, but it could damage family relationships permanently. Letting it go entirely felt impossible. It would signal to her that she could cross lines without consequences. By mid-afternoon, he made the call. He sent Emily a short, measured message. "Meet me. No excuses." The simplicity of the words carried weight. It wasn't angry or accusatory, it was deliberate, controlled. He needed her to know he was serious, that this wasn't a fleeting irritation he would forget. It was a confrontation that demanded honesty, reflection, and accountability. They agreed to meet at a quiet cafe, one tucked away from prying eyes. The hum of conversations around them offered a buffer, a safe distance from the outside world for what was about to unfold. Alex arrived early, sitting in a corner, watching the door. Each person who walked in made his pulse quicken. When Emily finally appeared, he noticed something different. She wasn't her usual self-assured, charming persona. There was tension in her shoulders and a flicker of unease in her eyes. Alex didn't speak immediately. He let her sit across from him, feeling the weight of the moment. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, before he finally spoke. "Emily, we need to talk about what happened with the credit card." "About the car." His voice was calm but firm, steady enough to cut through any excuses she might try to offer. She exhaled sharply, her fingers nervously tapping on the table. "Alex, I know I messed up. I didn't think it would get this complicated. I wanted to surprise Mom and Dad. And I thought you'd understand." Her words stumbled over each other, a mix of justification and genuine fear. Alex listened, letting her speak, but inside, the fire of anger and frustration still burned. He thought about every detail: the initial shock, the sinking feeling when he realized the transaction was real, the betrayal that had hollowed him out. He thought about how casually she had assumed he would forgive her without consequence, as though trust could be taken for granted. "I don't think you get it," he said quietly, leaning forward. "This isn't about the car or the money. It's about respect, Emily. about boundaries. You can't just take something from me and assume it's okay, because you think it's for a good reason. His words were deliberate, precise, designed to make her understand the weight of her actions. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, she looked genuinely uncomfortable. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, as if searching for an excuse that didn't exist. Alex felt a moment of satisfaction, a spark of control in a situation that had made him feel powerless. But he also knew he had to temper that satisfaction. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about accountability and resolution. He laid out what he knew about the financial situation. The car was technically registered in her name, but the payments came from his credit card. He explained how he could file a dispute that would reclaim the money immediately, a move that would have consequences for her. He watched her reaction closely. She was tense, shifting in her seat, clearly calculating, probably thinking about the consequences she had never considered. Alex realized something important. He held power in this moment. Not power to destroy, but power to teach a lesson without burning everything to the ground. He could escalate, create chaos, or he could guide the outcome toward understanding, reflection, and repair. He felt the surge of temptation to go for immediate revenge, to file the dispute, and make her feel the panic and loss he had felt. But he resisted. That path would satisfy the anger temporarily but could cause irreparable harm. Instead, he focused on her reaction, on her ability to comprehend the gravity of her actions. I want you to understand what you did, not just to apologize because you're afraid of consequences. I want you to really see it. His tone was firm but not cruel. He wasn't seeking humiliation. He was seeking awareness. Emily's hands trembled slightly. She looked down, almost ashamed, almost fragile. I didn't think. I wasn't thinking straight. I wanted to do something big for Mom and Dad, and I thought it wouldn't hurt you. I see now. I see how wrong I was. Her voice faltered, a mixture of guilt and relief. Alex felt a complicated wave of emotions. There was still anger, but it was tempered with a sense of hope. She was finally acknowledging her wrongdoing. The fire that had driven his desire for revenge now merged with something else, relief that accountability could be taken without destruction. He realized that the true power wasn't in hurting her, but in guiding her toward understanding and change. He made a decision. He didn't pull the dispute. He didn't publicly shame her. He chose a different kind of confrontation, one that required honesty, responsibility, and restitution. He asked her to repay him, to take responsibility for the purchase, and to communicate openly with their parents about the situation. He wanted her to face the consequences, but in a way that was measured, fair, and reparative. The conversation continued, tense but constructive. They discussed payment plans, timelines, and the importance of trust. Alex could see her growing comprehension of the impact of her actions. She was no longer defensive. She was reflective. She understood that generosity without accountability wasn't generosity at all. It was selfishness disguised as kindness. By the end of the meeting, there was a sense of resolution, though not complete relief. The tension hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had shifted. It was no longer anger and betrayal dominating the room. It was understanding, acknowledgement, and a path forward. Alex felt a cautious optimism that they could rebuild their relationship on firmer ground. Now that trust had been challenged, but addressed. As they left the cafe, Alex realized the lesson extended beyond this single incident. Revenge, he understood now, wasn't about immediate satisfaction or making someone feel pain. It was about balance, about making the other person recognize the impact of their choices while maintaining one's own integrity. That awareness was far more powerful than anger, far more transformative than any hasty retaliation. In the following days, Emily began taking steps to make amends. She sold some assets to repay Alex. She cut personal expenses, and she communicated openly with their parents about the situation. She was no longer pretending nothing had happened. Alex watched the process with a sense of cautious satisfaction, not the thrill of revenge, but the deeper satisfaction of justice achieved without destruction. Through the experience, Alex learned about patience, strategy, and restraint. He learned that being wronged didn't automatically give license to hurt someone else. It gave an opportunity to teach, guide, and restore. And he realized that sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal wasn't retribution, but calculated action coupled with moral clarity. In the quiet moments afterward, Alex reflected on the emotional journey. He had started with shock and betrayal, moved through anger and plotting, and now arrived at a place of resolution. The fire that had burned so fiercely inside him had been channeled, not extinguished, into something meaningful. It had become a tool for transformation rather than destruction. He also recognized the subtle shifts within Emily. She was no longer confident and reckless. She was aware of the consequences of her actions, humbled by the near catastrophe she had created, and committed to rebuilding trust. That awareness was more valuable than money, more powerful than anger, and more enduring than any fleeting satisfaction from revenge. Alex understood that revenge is rarely satisfying in the way people imagine. The immediate gratification is often replaced by a lingering sense of loss or guilt. True power lies in control, in choosing one's actions with intention, and in guiding outcomes toward fairness and growth. He had learned that lesson firsthand, and he would carry it with him for the rest of his life. By the time the week ended, the tension that had defined his life for days and weeks began to dissolve. There were still financial considerations to settle, but the emotional weight had lifted. He had confronted Emily, asserted his boundaries, and guided her toward accountability. And in doing so, he realized that the moment of confrontation, the climax of his emotional arc, had given him something far more enduring than revenge: clarity, strength, and a restored sense of agency. The incident with the car and the credit card became a turning point. Alex and Emily would never forget it, but it transformed their relationship. It was no longer just a sibling bond built on years of shared experience. It was a relationship tempered by challenge, accountability, and the understanding that actions carry consequences. That understanding was far more lasting than anger, far more meaningful than resentment, and far more powerful than revenge. Alex walked away from the experience changed. He had faced the betrayal, wrestled with his desire for revenge, and emerged not with destruction, but with resolution. He knew the lesson would stay with him. That power lies in measured action. That betrayal can be an opportunity for growth. And that the true victory comes not from hurting someone else, but from asserting one's integrity and moral clarity in the face of